Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into something completely fascinating today. We are going to decode a profound esoteric philosophy that's actually hiding right in plain sight. We're looking at the physical setup of the Unsurpassed Dharma altar. Now, at first glance, you might just see traditional religious objects, right? But as we'll discover, these seemingly simple items represent incredibly complex metaphysical concepts. It's literally a physical, tangible map guiding a practitioner toward spiritual liberation.
So, to map out our journey today, we're covering 5 key areas. First, we'll look at the cycle of rebirth. Then, we'll get into decoding the altar itself. Third, we'll examine the unsurpassed lamp. Fourth is the transmission of the way, and we'll wrap things up with wisdom, merit, and action. Let's dive right in.
Part 1. The cycle of rebirth and the universal quest for liberation. Because before we can decode the altar, we really need to understand the fundamental human problem it's trying to solve.
Consider the classic imagery of a hand gently holding a lotus flower. It's such a beautiful metaphor for the passing down of pure, unblemished wisdom. You know, a lotus grows right out of the muddy waters of the secular world, but its petals remain completely untouched and clean. This perfectly sets the tone for our entire explainer. We're exploring the search for a spiritual path that lets the human soul bloom purely, totally free from the endless, messy cycle of rebirth.
And that brings us to a really striking quote from the ancient philosopher Zhuangzi. He said, "People fear death, ghosts fear birth." Now, what does that actually mean? Well, according to the source text, when people die, they become ghosts who are terrified of being born back into the physical world just to suffer all over again. But once they are born, humans are absolutely terrified of dying. It's a completely exhausting reality, an endless loop passing through the different forms of birth and the paths of reincarnation. It's exactly this exhausting cycle that drives practitioners to desperately look for a permanent way out.
Moving on to Part 2, decoding the altar as a physical map of spiritual liberation. Remember, this isn't just about arranging some nice spiritual furniture. These physical artifacts are designed so practitioners can truly experience the wondrous virtues of the Unsurpassed Dharma. To read this metaphysical map, we have to grasp that core concept, Unsurpassed Dharma. Roughly translated, it means the unsurpassed way, and it represents the absolute ultimate truth. The text positions this as the definitive spiritual path, the one specifically designed to help the soul decisively escape that exhausting cycle of reincarnation we just talked about and return to its original pure state.
So, how is this ultimate truth mapped out? It's right there on the highest level of the altar, representing Nirvana. It's actually a duality. On one side, it represents yin. Think of this as the absolute void, complete stillness, essentially the concept of zero. But simultaneously, it embodies yang, the absolute origin of all things, supreme movement, the concept of one. It's pretty mind-bending. The altar perfectly balances the ultimate piece of the void with the creative spark of existence. Which brings us to Part 3, the unsurpassed lamp and the symbols of the upper altar. Let's zoom in on the specific items placed up there.
The absolutely crucial point to remember here is that each of these items, the unsurpassed lamp, the Buddha statues, the cups of tea, the lotus lamps, they are taking highly complex metaphysical concepts and translating them into tangible objects you can actually see and touch. Let's break down a few of the most important ones. Central to the whole shebang is the unsurpassed lamp. In our source material, this lamp represents Lao Mu, the unsurpassed mother, or the ultimate creator. This isn't just a physical light to illuminate the room. It symbolizes that ultimate source we mentioned a minute ago, the very origin of all life, and that absolute void to which all souls are striving to return. It is the undeniable focal point of the entire spiritual map.
Flanking that central lamp, we have the Buddha statues. Now, the text makes a very big point to emphasize that these are not merely idols meant to be worshipped so you can get rich or have good luck in the worldly sense. Nope, actually, they're more like mirrors. They are physical representations of what successful spiritual cultivation actually looks like. They serve as constant visual reminders for the practitioner of their ultimate goal, achieving enlightenment and successfully making that return journey back to the origin.
All right, moving into Part 4, transmission of the way. So we've looked at the physical objects. Now we need to pivot to the profound theological concept behind them.
How exactly is this deep, esoteric Tao passed down to a modern practitioner? Well, the source text outlines a very strict theological checklist to ensure the teaching is completely authentic. First, you need true lineage. That's an unbroken chain of transmission spanning generations. Second, there's the true heavenly decree, which is the spiritual mandate to actually pass the teachings on. And finally, true mind-heart transmission.
This is where the true essence of the teaching bypasses spoken words entirely and connects directly to the practitioner's inner being. You literally need all three of these for genuine spiritual liberation.
And this leads us to a truly fascinating directive from the text. A monk without shaved hair, an ordinary person, yet above worldly matters. I love this because it perfectly captures the unique vibe of cultivating this path today. The Unsurpassed Dharma is actually encouraging individuals to live as everyday lay people, working a 9-to-5, raising families, dealing with modern life, but to practice their spirituality with the exact same dedication and internal purity as an ordained monk living in a monastery. You are completely in the world, but not of it.
Which naturally brings us to our final section, wisdom, merit, and action. This is all about putting the philosophy into practice.
Because once you've received the transmission and you understand the altar's map, what do you actually do? Liberation isn't just about passively receiving something, it absolutely requires action. The text gives a super clear sequential path here. Step 1 is study. You have to gain that crucial spiritual wisdom. Step 2 is internal cultivation. This is doing the hard work of actively changing bad habits and purifying your character. And step 3 is external practice, building merit by actively going out, helping others, and spreading compassion. Wisdom, internal cultivation, and external action, they all have to operate together in perfect harmony.
And this whole process is anchored every single day by the repentance vow. Now, this isn't just mindlessly reciting words, it's a vital action. It acts as a daily internal mirror to help you recognize your own faults, cleanse the mind, and continually realign yourself with that ultimate void represented on the altar. The text stresses over and over that without this daily internal correction, the physical altar, it just remains a piece of wooden furniture.
So, we're going to conclude today's explainer with a pretty provocative question. Does the altar change your destiny, or do you? The source material tells this incredibly powerful story of a scholar named Liao Fan. He was told his exact, unchangeable destiny by a fortune teller. But by dedicating himself completely to vigorous internal and external cultivation, he literally rewrote his own fate. The altar is magnificent, it really is, but ultimately, it's just a mirror. It's your own dedicated internal journey and your own actions that actually unlock true spiritual liberation. That is definitely something profound to chew on as we wrap things up for today.